Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Snyder, and I am the Communications and Marketing Strategist at the University at Albany Alumni Association. I'm excited to welcome today's alumni guest, Nick Fiorito of the nonprofit organization Blankets of Hope. His story is inspiring, as is his impactful work with the nonprofit at BOH. I'd also like to welcome all who are watching today, and I invite you to type questions into the chat and Q&A sections, whichever works for you, as we go along. Moderating today's conversation is UAlbany Senior and Purple and Gold Student Ambassador Bryana Rogers. She likes to go by Bree. Bree is a communications and psychology major with a minor in business and is very active on campus. You'll see her around everywhere. She's a senator at large in the Student Association and a campus tour guide, and she's involved in Res Life and the programming board. Bree is also an e-board member of the on-campus women's weightlifting club, Girl Games. In addition, she's involved in the United Nations Association of the USA. Thanks for joining us for this Great Danes Connect program today, Bree. I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm turning it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, for that amazing intro. So Nick, I think we can go with a really easy one. Just tell us about how you grew up in your family.
Sure. Well, I just want to start by saying, Bree, what a background you got there. Maybe I should be interviewing you for this call. You've been doing a lot on campus, huh?
Yes, indeed.
So your question was, how did I grow up? Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents, and I am one of four siblings, one of four kids, and yeah, I basically hit the parent jackpot. I have two unbelievable parents who poured a tremendous amount of unconditional love into me and all my siblings. So I feel very blessed to have been raised the way I was.
Wow. Wow. So seeing that you came from Brooklyn, you really like the city life, I bet.
It's I feel like it's a part of me. It's all I've known. But in my older years, post college, I've also gotten to like nature a lot more. So always trying to get out of the city every once in a while to clear my head in nature. So I think it's good to have a little bit of balance of both.
Yeah. I mean, even talking about nature, I could see why you probably went to UAlbany. There's a bunch of nature up here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, other than the winter months where you just hibernate. But yeah, for sure. Upstate is amazing.
True, true. So what made you even choose UAlbany? Like there's so many CUNYs in the city. You already
Yeah.
grew up there. Like what was the defining moment for you?
So I have two older siblings that had went away to school before me. And they just talked about how amazing it was to have an experience away from home. So I knew I wanted to go away to school to kind of have that time for myself to figure out who I really was, kind of get away from everything I've known growing up. And I basically, my parents gave me the option of either you stay home or you go to a SUNY school. And I chose SUNY because I chose SUNY Albany just because it seemed like a really great school, wasn't too far from home, could drive back every once in a while. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I felt like Albany had a good kind of some good options for me to choose from when I got there.
Yeah. Um, so when you mean by options, you mean like in terms of like the academics or like the social life?
More specifically, the academics. I knew that's like socially, I knew that it was a great school. I mean, when I went, it was considered one of the biggest party schools. I don't know if things have changed now, but that was definitely a part of that decision. I'm not going to lie. I definitely wanted to have some fun being away as well.
Yeah, I see a lot of city kids come up from, I don't know, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and they love the atmosphere that UAlbany has. What did you major in?
So I majored in accounting and I got a minor in business administration.
Ah, did you always like the business field, or it was just something that popped up in your head?
So I always loved business and entrepreneurship. That was always a part of me ever since I was a kid. But when truthfully, when I got to Albany, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I just tried a bunch of different things. And ultimately, I kind of used a cheat code of following in my older brother's footsteps. And he was an accountant, and he worked for PwC, and I kind of made my life easier by following his path because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with mine. And I'm dyslexic, so I hated writing, and accounting was kind of like this road for me to take where I could just kind of focus on the numbers, and it worked for me.
Wow. Wow, that's great to hear. Wow. Um, did your brother also go to UAlbany as well, or he went somewhere else?
He went to SUNY Binghamton.
Ah, that's like our competitive school.
Yeah.
Wow. So with accounting, like where did you see yourself going along the road? Because I know with your story, you know?
Yes. I mean, like I said, I was just kind of following in my brother's footsteps, right? So it was like go into corporate America, kind of get a job there and just start working my way up the corporate ladder. And that's kind of what I did right after college. While I was at UAlbany the summer before I graduated, I had an internship at New York Life, the insurance company, in the audit department. And it was a good experience. It was a good company. So post graduation, I took a full-time job there.
Wow. And then like how did you like the corporate life? Because I know a lot of people are like they're either scared or they're like, they're straight for it.
How did I like the corporate life? I think I learned a lot in the corporate world, but ultimately it wasn't my cup of tea. I think that um, there's a lot to learn when you get out of college, and it's a great place for you to learn. But ultimately, you got to find what works for you internally, and it just seemed like it wasn't the right fit for me. But I was fortunate though, because the company I was working for was a really great one in the sense of the people that were working there.
Mhm.
So even though the environment in terms of the corporate world wasn't great, I made a lot of really incredible friends and mentors along that path, which I can definitely say contributed to kind of where I am today.
Right. That's kind of a great transition because I was going to ask, um, it was the summer of 2016, if I'm not correct, that you and your brother made that transition from the corporate life to the entrepreneurial. So between those 2 years, was this like you finding your mentors and finding the resources you needed to make that transition?
Yeah, that's a part of it. But also in 2015, I basically had a life transformation because I was assaulted. In 2015, I was playing in a football game on the weekend and I got punched in the face and my jaw was shattered and broken in three places. And for 3 months, I had my mouth wired shut, drinking all my meals through a straw, not able to speak. And for 3 months, I was out of work, right? Just home. And during that time was really when I started to sit down and ask myself some of those really big questions that I didn't really ask myself when I graduated, which is like, what do I really want to do? What's my purpose? What am I really here to do? Like, and that's when my journey really started in the sense of like trying to figure out and pursue what it is that truly made me come alive.
Wow. Honestly, wow. If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't even know. You look perfectly fine right now.
Yeah, I had some good doctors.
Wow.
Channeled my inner Kanye West there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like a Kanye West story. Um, so I'm really interested. How did you and your brother get in the niche of making blankets for homeless individuals? Like, what sparked your mind? Was it those questions, or what was it?
Now, so Blankets of Hope was really this happy accident. So now fast forward to 2016 when my brother and I actually quit our jobs. We just we had this point where we looked at each other and we said, like, if there was ever going to be a time for us to go out into the world and figure something out for ourselves, it had to be now. We had two older siblings, so we saw kind of what was coming, in our future with kids and a mortgage. And when you have those things, it becomes a lot more difficult to make those moves, right? So we just kind of looked at each other and said, like, hey, like, let's do it now before it's too late. And we took this naive leap of faith into the world of entrepreneurship. And at the time, we quit our jobs with this idea of, hey, let's start a meditation app. Because when I was assaulted in 2015, meditation was a big part of me really taking this terrible time and transforming it into a really a pivotal point in my life that changed my life for the better. So I wanted to kind of take that and bring it to the masses, right? So we quit our jobs with that intention, but we shortly realized that we did not have any of the skill sets to be able to take that and bring it to market, and we failed pretty miserably. And then we went basically from one bad idea to the next, to the next, to the next for the next 6 months. And, during that time, there's a lot of anxiety, right? Because you go from getting a paycheck every 2 weeks to now you're kind of in the middle of the ocean without a life vest, and you're just trying to keep yourself afloat. So an extremely difficult time. But now fast forward 6 months later, it's the middle of winter here in New York City. I'm laying in my bed and I can't sleep. And all of a sudden, this image of a homeless man pops into my head. And when I was commuting into my corporate job in New York City, I'd get off at Madison Square Park, and every day I'd see this homeless man sitting on the bench. And every day I would walk past them into my corporate job. And every day in my head, I'd have this little conversation with myself, like, I wonder what his life is like. I want to go up to him. I want to talk to him. I want to help him. I want to do something, but I never did anything. I just walked right by him. For some reason on this night, I have no idea why, his face pops back in my head and a little voice whispers, if you're not going to do something now, then when? So I jumped up out of my bed. I opened my laptop and I went to GoFundMe, and I just wrote a little story about how I wanted to raise money to get blankets to people living on the streets. I figured it was a very practical idea. If I was outside and I was cold and someone gave me a blanket, I would appreciate it. Really wasn't much deeper than that. So I closed my laptop, feeling good about what I just did. I finally got this thing off my chest that I wanted to do for so long. I slept like a baby. And now the next day, I got to tell my brother and my business partner, Mike, I got this idea. I want to blanket the homeless. And he looks at me, he's like, Nick, that's really kind of you. And that's a good idea. But like, we're about to be homeless ourselves if we don't figure out how to make some money, and this isn't going to do it. And I'm like, you're right. But there's something inside me that says we just have to do this now. We'll do it real quick, and then we'll get back to the drawing board and we'll figure something out. So he eventually buys into my passion, but he's someone who doesn't like to half-ass anything he does. So he said, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And let's add a handwritten letter to go with every blanket we hand out, just letting these people know that, we are thinking about them, that we care about them, and most importantly, we believe in them, right? Because when someone doesn't believe in themselves, if someone outside of them believes in them, sometimes it can give them that energy to kind of pull themselves out of the situation they're in. And it's that human connection element to the handwritten component that really makes them feel connected to society again, right? So we raised some money from family and friends who felt bad for us. We buy some blankets on Amazon, wrote some handwritten letters, and went out in New York City to hand them out. But before we went out, we bought a little camera to document what we were doing, to show the people who donated, this is, the impact we're making with your money. This is what we're doing. So we go out, we have an incredible day. As you can imagine, when you're giving and expect nothing in return, that's the juice of life, right? When you're seeing someone go from sad to smiling, there's no better feeling in the world, right? So we have this beautiful day. We get back home, and my brother takes the footage we got from that day. We put together a short film. We call it Blankets of Hope, post it on our Facebook page, and that's it. Blankets of Hope is done. Fun family project. Next winter, we'll do it again. But now it's time to get back to the drawing board, actually figure out how we're going to make a living for ourselves. But God, the universe, the greater force that is, whatever you believe in, kind of had some different plans for us. A few nights later, we're working late in my apartment, and we get an email that basically changes the entire trajectory of our life. And the subject line of the email says, donation to Nick and Mike. It goes on to say, hi, my name is Todd Chafee. I'm a venture capitalist in California. Came across your video. Would love to provide you mentorship and financial support. Let me know if you want to talk. So at this point, we look at each other and like, if someone messing with us, this can't be for real. We Google a dude's name, and the first thing that pops up is a Forbes Midas list. So this is a major investor in Netflix, Twitter, Snapchat, all these major tech companies. And we're like, holy crap, this guy wants to talk to us. Yes, 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 we want to talk. So we email him back, set up a phone call, and the next day we jump on a call with him. And for 30 minutes, he's talking to us and he wants to hear who we are, what we're all about. And he's humming us along. And at the end of the 30 minutes, he's like, okay, I like you guys and I want to help you. He said, I want you to stop everything you're doing and put all your energy and focus on this idea of blankets of hope, because I really see the potential to make a big impact here. And if Mike and I are honest, at that point, we didn't see it. We were just two dudes handing out blankets in New York City. But when he came into our life, we really started dreaming bigger about the impact we can make. So that first year we did 100 blankets and we said, you know what, these tech guys think in 10X numbers, right? So let's 10X our goal and do 1,000 blankets. We had no idea how we were going to do that. It was just Mike and I on the streets, but we said, you know what, we'll put one foot in front of the other and we'll figure it out as we go. So we started handing out blankets in the city, start posting on social media. And then our second stroke of magic hit when the New York City press found out what we were doing, and we got covered on all the major news stations in New York City, CBS, Fox, ABC. And then my 5th grade teacher, who was in Delaware, saw us on the news and sent me a Facebook message saying, hey, Nick, I have 200 students here that would love to help out. That's kind of when the light bulb went off. It was like, wow, this is an idea that can actually change the world. If we can get the future generation to start thinking with this mentality of kindness and community service, that's an idea that can really shift culture, right? Like that's something that can become so much bigger than just Mike and I, and can really get us to scale this impact. So ever since that day, we've gone all in on this idea of partnering with schools and teaching students kindness. And fast forward 7 years later now, and we're in 44 states across the US and have given out over 125,000 blankets of hope.
Wow. There's just so many moving parts in this story. Wow. So that's just crazy. So you just had the thought in your head and you just, woke up, you saw that guy, and then the name was just something you just came up with. It wasn't something you had to like think about multiple times.
No, it was just, I think it was because we didn't put any pressure on the idea. It was very, it wasn't meant to be bigger than it was. It was really, the intention behind it was to do this quick family project and make an impact, because we had been failing so much ourselves. We figured, why not think about others for a little bit and get our mind off of our failure. And I guess we were rewarded for that. But yeah, it's not, it really, I often like to tell people, like, we didn't choose Blankets of Hope. It almost feels like Blankets of Hope chose us.
Wow. Like I always wonder, because I used to be interested in entrepreneurship as well. And I always wondered, like, do you have to know everything at that moment to get started? And it looks like you really didn't need to.
No, absolutely not. No, well, I mean, Blankets of Hope continues to go through changes, right, over the last 7 years of how we operate, what we do. So, like, there is no such thing as having it all figured out, because a business is a living, breathing organism that needs constant food, and it needs to be, it changes basically, right? So to think you can have all the answers at the beginning is just impossible, and it's something that needs to be cared for.
Okay. So like, what do you guys do day to day to keep the business going? Like, what are some new ideas you guys have?
So the majority of our day is spent in business development, finding potential donors for Blankets of Hope, business partnerships. Because we are a nonprofit, we're a very lean team. So what we have to do is basically rely on partnerships to continue to allow us to scale. So, for example, this past Friday, we celebrated World Kindness Day, and we had a partnership with Kind Snacks, the Kind bars. And that was a partnership that we had created to really amplify our brand. And we did something called, a new thing that we're launching now is BOH at Work, where we've been working with these schools for so long, and so many employers are reaching out to us saying they want to get their employees involved. So now we're basically doing what we do with the kids, just in the workforce, but still sticking to what we're here to do, which is to teach the students. So for every employee who participates, they're also sponsoring students as well to go through this kindness workshop. So that's a little bit of kind of what we do.
Wow. So it's all just tying together. Wow.
Yeah, ultimately, one thing that has been like the driving force of the North Star is a mission. And our mission at Blankets of Hope is to inspire a global movement of kindness, one blanket and one student at a time. So everything that we do, every decision that we make for the company revolves around that mission. And once you have a really clear mission like that, it makes making decisions on what you're going to focus on and what you're not going to focus on a lot easier.
Mm. So it's a really selfless approach. You're really just thinking of others in mind with every decision.
Well, I think from a business perspective, like if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, ultimately a business is in the you're there to create value for others ultimately, right? That's what business is. Like business doesn't exist unless you're creating value for others. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Mm. And like, does it ever get overwhelming? Like, do you think like, I don't even know if I could do this anymore, or?
Oh, plenty of times. Yeah. It's the, business, being an entrepreneur is, it's not all the glorification that it gets on social media. There's a lot of difficulties, a lot of moments where you like, and I don't even know what the hell I'm doing right now. But fortunately for me, I have my brother and my business partner who is by my side. So we kind of can offset each other. When one is feeling down, the other guy has to lift each other up. We have to lift each other up. So yeah, it's not easy though. You need to have some serious resilience to be an entrepreneur.
Wow. Wow. And like with the entrepreneurial life, is it ever like, you said you had like, there was a lot of fails in the beginning, but since it's been going on for so long, do you still think you're going to run into those patches, or you guys have it down, or, you know?
I going back to that analogy of like a business is like a child, right? So that in the beginning of a business, it's a baby, it's an infant, and you need to put a lot of attention to that infant, right? And then it goes from an infant to a baby and it can crawl, and you still need to put a lot of attention into it. And then it kind of goes into a teenage year where now it becomes a little more independent. So I think we're working our way up that stage where we spend less and less time on the day-to-day and more on the overall strategy to kind of continue to expand the reach. But there's no saying that we're done with this. We think Blankets of Hope is our first act, and we have a couple more acts in us. So I'm sure there's going to be more in my future where I have to feel all that stuff all over again at the next crossroads.
Good to know. All right. So I feel like a big question we'd had to ask is, what is the ultimate cheat code for life?
So yeah, Mike and I gave a TED talk, and that was the name of our TED talk was the ultimate cheat code. And basically it's kindness. It's this concept of thinking less about yourself and more of others. And I think a lot of times our issues, our problems come from just having it all wrapped up in ourselves. And once we get out of ourselves and start thinking about how can I help the person right in front of me, you kind of stop thinking about yourself so much. And there's this real gift that you get from actually being kind to others, right? It sounds counterintuitive, right? Like you're helping the other person, but by helping the other person, you're actually helping yourself. So it's this ironic thing where it is actually selfish to be kind, right? It goes both ways. Another way we like to say it is basically that the secret to living is giving.
That's really well put. Yeah. Wow. So do you feel that your younger self would imagine all of this even occurring?
No, I don't think. Well, from a specifics standpoint, absolutely not, because I didn't even think Blankets of Hope was going to be a thing when I did Blankets of Hope the first time. But in terms of, I feel like I always had ambition. So I always dreamt of achieving great things. So I just never knew what it was going to look like. And I think it's important to have that belief in ourselves to even allow ourselves the opportunity to attract those things into our lives in the future. So the answer is no, I didn't ever expect this to happen the way it has happened, but I always believed in myself and wanted to bet on myself.
Mm. And do you feel like, with the last thing you just said, betting on yourself, that a lot of people may not be doing that when they want to choose like a new career path, that they're not sure of where they want to go?
Um, hmm, I don't know. I don't want to generalize for people, but I think in terms of like, if people are at that point where they are trying to make that decision of if they want to start something new, my best piece of advice is to start small. I think oftentimes what happens is complexity is the enemy of execution.
Mm.
And like we're thinking too big about it when it really needs to be like, what is the one step that I can take to start getting me in that direction? Because there's that famous Lao Tzu quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Right. And I think we're always constantly thinking about the 1,000-mile journey ahead of us, but we really need to be focused on what is the next step I could be taking in front of me, and then take another one, and then take another one, and then take another one, and let, this beautiful thing called compounded interest take its path.
Yeah, basically just taking it day by day and not focusing on all these many things, just focusing on what's right in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, when you have, like, if you're not executing, I would say that is the thing to do, right? Because ultimately you can sit and ponder your whole life until you die, right? Without doing anything. And you can continue to make the idea better in your head, but in reality, you did nothing to actually take action and see if you even had the ability to figure something out, right? I think it's not being afraid of failure. And I think that is actually the thing holding most people back from taking that next step, whatever it is, from a tiny one to a big one. It's that fear of failure. And I still face it every day. And I have to constantly do work on myself to not you know, let that fear of failure get in my way of making decisions that I think will benefit me in the long term.
Mm. And then what do you mean by like working on yourself? Like, is it the meditation, or you journal? Like, what are some things that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, so I think that one thing is, first and foremost, I think it's a philosophy that you need to have in terms of like never thinking that you have it all figured out, right? I consider myself a student for life. Like I will always be a student until the day that I die. And I think that's the first and foremost, to have that mindset is most important. But then in terms of what does that look like from a practicality standpoint, um, morning routine is really pivotal for me, because it's kind of what anchors my day, what gets it started, and gets it started on my terms. And I kind of have this like this morning routine that I've created for myself that really simplifies things, and it starts with movement. So I wake up and I move my body every day, whether that's push-ups or going to the gym or taking a walk, but it's getting the blood flowing as soon as I wake up. Then it's meditation. So now it's sitting in silence, whatever you want to call it, meditation or sitting in silence, but basically cutting out the outside world, right? Not looking at your phone, not looking at notifications, and really trying to get aligned with what's going on inside of you. And then the third and final part of my morning routine is a journal exercise, where I will start with writing some things I'm grateful for, and then have this thing called basically free write, where I'll put some time on the clock, and for 7 minutes I'll just kind of get anything that's going on inside my head out onto paper, so that I'm not taking that with me the rest of the day. And it allows me to process a lot of the problems that I think I'm having in my head. Getting it down on paper allows me to see it from a different perspective. And sometimes, it gives you the perspective you need to see that it's really not that big of a deal, or there's a really easy solution by just doing this. So it's a way, it's a way for me to give myself advice as I start my day.
Mm. And how did you build discipline? Because it is kind of pretty hard to start these routines and build it in your lifestyle. So like, how did you do it?
I think going back to that other answer before, right? It starts really small. Like discipline is, you have to make it so that you can do it consistently. Like I always tell people, is it better to go to the gym for 3 hours for one day, or to go for 5 minutes for 30 straight days, right? And it's better to go to the gym 5 minutes for 30 straight days, right? Because now you're developing that habit, right? So ultimately, discipline just comes down to creating habits, because we need to basically hardwire our brains to be able to do these things, right? And that's how it starts. It's just by taking something, making it super simple to do continuously, right? And then once that habit is developed, then you can build on top of that habit, right? But once again, it goes to starting really small. But if you try to develop that habit by doing something that's really complicated for you, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to fall off, and then there's going to be this kind of feedback system to yourself that you're not good enough and you can't do it. And then so there's like a science to it in terms of really starting small. And going back full circle here with Blankets of Hope, after students do participate in our kindness workshop and they complete their Blanket of Hope, after that, we provide them with a kindness challenge, which is a 21-day exercise where they then begin to develop that habit of kindness, so that it's bigger than just that experience. We have them every day be conscious of an act of kindness that they can do, whether that be holding the door for someone in the classroom, whether that be saying thank you to their parents. These little micro moments of kindness, but repeated over time, change the way our brain is wired.
Wow. Wow. And like, what is the experience for the students? Like, how do they enjoy that challenge they have to do?
From the challenge perspective, the teachers have often said it's been great from a culture perspective in the classroom, right? Because it allows them all to get on the same page about how important it is to be kind, and it's kind of gamified in that sense. But going back to the actual experience with Blankets of Hope and that day, that experience is really special for the kids, because ultimately they feel empowered, right? Because at the end of the workshop, every student, no matter if they're 5 years old, 8 years old, 15 years old, is making a direct impact in an individual's life in their community. So they feel like, not like they're a kid and they can't do anything about it, but they feel like they're a kid and they're making a difference, right? So that, and the emotions that they feel when they're doing this, is something that we hope sticks for a long time to come.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it does. Experiences like that, it can shape their life. Like you said, they could start off small and that challenge can move on for their life.
Yeah, and then to go full circle, like, so when I was in fourth grade, I grew up in New York City, like I said, and that's when 9/11 happened, right? September 11th. And during that year, my fourth grade teacher actually had us write handwritten letters to firemen that went to the Twin Towers that day. And to this day, how many years later, I still remember that experience that I had with my teacher in fourth grade. And I hope that this is something similar to that, in the sense where it's not just someone standing in front of a classroom and telling them how important it is to be kind and all the scientific benefits to it, because all those things are true. But as a kid, it will go in one ear and out the other. But when you have an actual experience, right, an internal experience for yourself, those are the things that really stick. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn.
Yeah, and that's kind of shocking. You remember when you were 4 years old that happened.
Not 4 years old, in fourth grade.
Oh, fourth grade, my bad. Well, how old were you in fourth grade, actually?
What are you, like 12 years old, I think, something like that.
It's like a long time ago from now. So.
Yeah. Feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. So, like, let's say I wanted to volunteer, because I'm always looking to help people out. How would somebody go about doing that?
So for one, we've partnered with UAlbany before, where UAlbany has actually participated and gotten something together on campus where students have written letters, attached them to the blankets, and then donating them to a shelter near you all. So that's one part, is getting blankets of hope to your school, getting it to your family member's school that's a teacher. That's one really important role for us to continue to spread this movement in schools across the country. But other than that, I mean, I think as a nonprofit, we're always looking for people to help us, and there's always things to do on the table. So if there were people that had an interest in helping Blankets of Hope in any shape or form, using their strengths that they had, they could just shoot me an email at nick@blanketsofhope.com, and happy to get on a call and explore ways to help out.